A lot of tomahawks that happen to be out there in the market happens to be out there for all types of reasons. Some of them are just really cool and really fun. Some of them are there for historical purposes, but a lot of tomahawks are really out there promising that it's going to deliver on combative contexts. Meaning, when the chips are down and you're going to go all James Reese on somebody, your tomahawk is going to be there to help you defend yourself and the people you love. Princess, I want you to take that chair, okay? Don't come up here. No, there's too many sharp toys. No, on that side. Nope, too many sharp toys. Nope, we're gonna stay here. Yes, stay on the chair, thank you. We're going to go and take a look at the two broad categories when it comes to selecting a fighting tomahawk. One of them is going to be for utility, and the other one is going to be very purpose-driven and combat-specific. So when I'm talking about utility, I'm talking about, let's say we're talking about military personnel. So some of the key critical demands as it relates to military personnel happens to be the use of a tomahawk for breaching, meaning they can go ahead and use the tool, use the tomahawk to go through a door, to break a windshield, break down a door, chop through a car door. There are many reasons why the tomahawk is being used, and you have a lot of tomahawks in the market. I can think of several of them right now. In fact, RMJ is really super famous for building these types of tomahawks that do this kind of double duty. This double duty where it can do all of these breaching tasks and duties that I just listed, but also, from what I understand, it has a substantial pedigree in combat fighting. However, for us civilians, we may want to go ahead and create two separate criteria, one that's a little more pure and purpose driven, while the other one is a little more towards utility, for a very simple reason. When you end up purchasing a tomahawk and it's for utility, unless you're going to use a tomahawk on a daily basis, you're going to chop wood with it, you're going to do some sort of bushcraft, or you're going to be going through concrete with it, or you see yourself busting through car doors with it, I'm going to generally suggest that a utility tool has to be completely separate, simply because you won't be doing those things on a daily basis, even if you purchase it for that exact reason. However, when you purchase a combat-specific tool, a big part of its use is going to be your training. So you're going to be training every day with the tool. You're going to be moving with it. If you're one of those martial artists that believe that creating your own kata is going to help, that's great. But even just the familiarization with it, meaning elevating your kinesthetic awareness with the tool so that your movement with it is really highly efficient, yeah, picking that tool is going to be important, especially when you categorize it within the martial movement category, because your practice is going to be dependent on it. What you don't want is to take a utility-specific breaching tool and then try to put it in a martial movement category, because it's not going to move well with you. But then if you take a combat martial movement tool and try to break down a door or pop a door hinge or go through a windshield, you'll probably get through with it, but now your tool has a few dings in it, and if you're one of those people where that bothers you, it would bother me, then yeah, it's probably not the tool to use. Let me share with you some of the items that I have here on this table, and I'm going to kind of walk you through it in terms of my thoughts as to what martial movement tomahawks are, in my opinion, what is the criteria that makes them really work. And hopefully this is something that can inform you as you look to build your own tomahawk collection. So first and foremost, as much as you can, invest in training tools that closely mimic the design of the tomahawk. Now this is going to be a little difficult because a lot of times the tomahawk that you get is going to be a little different in terms of dimensions, but also in terms of weight, compared to the tomahawk that you own. The one exception to this happens to be the Wingguard Empress, that when you purchase it comes along with the Wingguard Empress trainer. So this is really cool to work with because They're both roughly the same dimensions, but also roughly the same weight. So if you're going to look to get a tomahawk that has a combination of both, you're going to want to get this. Take a look at its dimensions. They're pretty exact. And by the way, the maker of this training tomahawk happens to be Chris Volpes of Volpes Training Tools. I think he's superb. I think he's the premier right now as far as making true replica training tools. You should check him out. I have several videos using his tomahawks for it, and I think he's superb. The first one I would recommend, if you're looking to partner a training tomahawk with a training tool, it would be Wingard Wearables, because when you purchase the Wingard Empress, you get the Wingard Empress trainer in the same package. Speaking of Chris Volpes, this is the Winkler R&D training tomahawk. It's great to work with. He got permission directly from Daniel Winkler. See how even the grooves are here. You have the front spike, all of the dimensions. It moves really well, but there's something else I really like about it. I recently did a video where my girlfriend Robin, we were doing some demos on how to use this, and this hurts. I mean, this is actually a very effective martial tool. So I'm not going to go so far as to say you don't need the Winkler R&D Tomahawk, but if you end up just getting a training tool that can also be used as a weapon, this might be it. Really super light, really super good, and it's something that I really enjoy. Now we're going to do a comparison between something that's a little bit more of a hybrid and supposedly a fighting tomahawk versus a pure fighting tomahawk. And a pure fighting tomahawk is going to be the Empress tomahawk, but then something that's a little more hybridized, but I think it's leaning a little bit more towards utility breaching. One of my favorites happens to be the Cold Steel Trenchhawk. The Cold Steel Trenchhawk, I gotta tell you that if you're just taking a look at this, just from a pure end of the world as we know it, and you gotta go through the entire zombie wasteland and you gotta have something on your side, I would say that, you know, it's very tempting to just walk off with this one. The handle is plastic, that means it's waterproof, you don't have to worry about anything. The pure intimidation factor of this, geez Louise, it's been tested several times. It can do breaching, it can be thrown. It is so multi-purpose, and of course it has these grooves here so that now you can do close quarters with it, you can do two-handing with it. This is really phenomenal, and you can find it for like 40 or 50 bucks on Amazon. You can hoard them. One problem that I have with this is because of its weight. The weight distribution of it is so forward heavy, but also the fact that it is so long, it's not a very educative tool, meaning you're not going to learn too much about how to use a tomahawk specifically. That's one thing. This may not be a very good educative tool. Very good for breaching, very good for the zombie apocalypse, but as an educative tool, meaning it's going to teach you how to move well with a tomahawk, probably not my first choice. But if we are looking at something that's a little more purpose-driven, on the very extreme side of it is you're looking at the Empress. This is something that is designed specifically for soft targets, i.e. if you're going through the zombie apocalypse and they're not wearing any body armor, this is the one that's going to do that job. So it's very purpose-driven. Is it educative? You have a training tool that comes with it. So it goes very much towards the educative piece. But is it effective? Is it something that, should every layer of defense have failed, would I go with this? I personally would go with either one of them as a final layer of defense. However, this is more educative and this is more utility. But there's also a safety issue that I've always pointed out with this back spike. I think it's a little too dangerous, and all you need is one mistake and it could do some harm. A very good product, it's very strong and very well tested. However, it's not the pure purpose-driven combat tool that this happens to be. It has, in fact, become one of my favorites, and Wingard has now become one of my favorite companies because so much research is being put into the development of an entire inventory of Native American inspired tools that draws a lot of inspiration from the Native American tomahawk. Somewhere in that spectrum is going to be pure martial, a little hybrid, but leaning more towards breaching and utility. Somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, a little bit closer to the martial side of things, are the Torona tomahawks. This is the yokai, and this is the multo, the ghost. Some of the things that I've pointed out before, but it's important to consider when you're picking a fighting tomahawk, is not just the weight distribution, but now take a look at that handle. Look at the handles wherein it will show you long range capabilities, mid range capabilities, and short. You can also see that on the yokai. So this kind of sectioning is going to be an indicator to you that this is a very specific martial tool. So that's one of the things that I like to look at, the handle. And does the handle allow you to have long range capabilities, mid range capabilities, and ultimately short range capabilities? So when you're picking a fighting tomahawk, keep that in mind. Now, if we take a look at the Trenchhawk, there was an attempt at that way up here by the grip. But you don't necessarily get that kind of sectioning the rest of the handle. So many Trenchhawk owners and also Warhawk owners have had to kind of improvise that kind of sectioning. What I like to use is this kind of tape so that I'm aware that if I'm changing grips, I'm in a completely different place. The results have been mixed with this. Sometimes my eyes still have to go to the handle, whereas if you're taking a look at the kind of sectioning that you see with, let's say, a multo tomahawk, where the indexing is very clear, I know where I am each time. And sometimes I don't even have to use a second hand. Just by closing my eyes, I know where I am. I know I'm in long range, mid range, short range, and I can go comfortably between all three without thinking, oh my gosh, I could do some harm to myself, because the handle is sectioned that well. This is one of the best fighting tomahawks I've ever seen, and I really hope we can see more work from Ray Torona of this caliber. Let's go back a little bit to the Empress. Now this is a little more on the historical side, but something I want you to think about. Well, Rolando, you just came up with that criteria where that kind of sectioning is important. Well, how come you don't necessarily see that? Yeah, you do, because you have this flaring here, and this is a short weapon. If I'm not mistaken, this might be just over 13 inches. So you already have the two sections for it. You don't need long range for it. This is 13 inches. This is a medium to short range tool. So now what you're looking at is this narrower grip and then the second one. That's all you need. So yes, it is sectioned. So you get some sort of tactile feedback with a weaponized ergonomics so that you have a sharpened puño. So you kind of know where you are when you're making these changes. You don't necessarily get that from the Trenchhawk. Like I said, still a superior tool in many ways, but just that part of it, the ergonomics, is just not there. So we have to improvise for it. So this is why it leans more towards the breaching utility, because when you're doing breaching utility, you don't need to know from a tactile perspective that you have to change grips. Lastly, and I want to go ahead and take a look at the Winkler Tomahawk R&D, which is the definition of combat tomahawk. If we take a look at it, it covers so many bases. It has all of its basics covered, meaning you have the sharp edge, you have the back spike, you have these sectional gripping over here, but you have enough innovation going for it that all of a sudden it's its own tool. The fact that this is angled in the right way so that if I decide that this is a karambit grip, I get that right feedback. I don't harm myself because there's an exact safety mechanism over here. So I can't actually use this spike to go into my flesh. And this slides right into that notch so that my flesh cannot be harmed by that back edge. That's highly innovative. It has to be so precise Because if you look at other models of tomahawks, they don't necessarily have that right angle. And if you try to use this karambit grip with a tomahawk, you might end up having that spike bite into your hand, which is now super harmful. The other innovative piece to it is this round head. I made an entire video of it, so you can go ahead and check that out. This is the very definition to me of what a pure combat tomahawk is. It's being used by our Navy SEAL Team 6. It is also designed by one of the top martial artists in the world, Tuhon Raphael Kayanan, who is one of the instructors of the SIOC Kali group and the SIOC Tactical group. And also he is working with one of the tops in the industry, Daniel Winkler. So when you have that kind of combination, it goes without saying that this is one of the top designs in fighting tomahawks in the world. My own personal definition as to why this is tops and this is the one to measure all of them against is because of that combination of good fundamentals, good innovation, so that it is actually, if you want to use it just using your fundamentals, you're good. You want to get all innovative with it, you're super good there also. There's a lot of things you can do with this tomahawk that makes it so that this is as all-purpose a fighting tool as it gets. So when you're looking at fighting tomahawks, just make sure that it's something that on the one hand is super safe, on the other hand it's super educative. Number 3, as a last layer of defense, if you have to defend yourself against a horde of zombies and all of your ammunition is out, that's the one you're going to go down with. But also, you have to make a decision as to which category are you going to go with. Are you going to go with something that is super hybridized, can do a little bit of double duty, but leans more towards breaching? Or are you going to go with something super specific like the Empress? Or are you going to go with something that has a good combination of fundamentals and innovation, so that when you start your tomahawk practice and start your tomahawk collection, hey, end of day, you're going to end up collecting tomahawks. Have this criteria in mind. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you found my insights helpful to you. Thank you for letting me share. Stick around, stay tuned. More videos to come.